Good morning. How are you? Welcome to William Penn University in Oskaloosa, Iowa. William Penn is thrilled to host this event, which is officially called the Ideas and Inspiration in Iowa Leaders Speak Lecture Series. And this is actually the first installation of this series, so we are very appreciative of the Bernie Sanders campaign of taking us up on our invitation to speak to you today. Isn't that wonderful? I do want to say we invited all the presidential candidates to do this very thing, to be able to interact with you as Iowans who hold such a key place in the first in the nation caucus cycle. All the time other states in the country want to take this position that Iowa has away from Iowa. So I applaud you for being here today to help advance the dialogue of issues that are important to Iowans and to all Americans. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to keep this very brief. I just wanted to let you know that we hope to have more in this lecture series. Thank you for being here. And now I would like to introduce the William Penn Student Government Association President, Carly Schmalz. Thank you.
Hello, welcome and thank you for joining us for our Ideas and Inspiration in Iowa lecture series. My name is Carly Schmalz, the president of William Penn University Student Government Association. Our guest today is Senator Bernie Sanders. He's one of 7 Democrats that are running for the president in next year's election. Senator Sanders was born in Brooklyn, New York, and graduated from the University of Chicago with a degree in political science in 1964. Senator Sanders has been dedicated to public service as a mayor, a congressman, and as a current U.S. Senator in Vermont. He speaks often on topics such as income inequality, climate change, and universal health care. We're very excited to have him here today at the Musco Technology Center at William Penn University. With that, I'd like to introduce Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming out today. And let me get right to it. How's that? All right? So what I want to do is I want to chat for a while. I want to perhaps ask you some questions, and you can ask me some questions or make some comments, and we'll go on from there. Let me start off by asking you to think about the state of American democracy. All of you know that democracy is a fairly new concept in world history, only a few hundred years old. That it is a pretty radical concept. That throughout world history, more or less what's gone on is a few people on the top, kings, queens, czars, lords, make the decisions. They decide when you're going to go to war. They decide how much you're going to pay in taxes, and you obey. That's it. Your job is to obey. Their job is to make decisions. And theories evolve as to why that's right, the divine right of kings. They're supposed to rule, and you're supposed to obey. And a few hundred years ago, people changed that. And they said, well, maybe it's a good idea or a better idea if people themselves had a say in what happened in their lives. And I think that that is an important and good evolution. But the question that we have got to ask ourselves today is, what is the state of American democracy? Are we comfortable with the fact that in the last election, a midterm election, not a presidential election, 63% of the American people didn't vote? Are we content, and I speak to the young people, that in that same election, 80% of young people did not vote? Are we content that as a result of a Citizens United Supreme Court decision by a 5-4 vote, the court said that the wealthiest people in this country could spend as much money as they wanted on buying elections? No, that was just a general question. I'll get to you. I want to discuss this issue, all right? I come from a state which has a tradition of town meetings over several hundred years, meetings like this. People come together to discuss the school budget or the highway budget, and everybody gets one vote. That's called democracy. And I want you to think, and I want to discuss this. Does it make sense? Is it consistent with democracy to say that you have one vote and you got one vote? Koch brothers, second wealthiest family in America, they have one vote. Oh, but they can spend $900 million on this campaign. Is that a good idea? Is it a good idea 50 years after the passage of the Voting Rights Act? And as you know, the Voting Rights Act was a very significant step forward, which finally said that all Americans, regardless of the color of their skin, were going to have the right to vote. That a few years ago, the Supreme Court undid an important provision of the Voting Rights Act. And now we have governors and legislatures, Republican governors and legislatures all over this country passing laws which essentially make it harder for poor people or old people or young people to vote under the guise of trying to fight voter fraud, of which happens, thank God, not to be a serious problem in this country. Everybody knows what's going on, trying to suppress the vote, make it harder for people who will vote against them. Is that consistent with democracy? So, first question, and first point that I want to make, and I speak primarily maybe to the young people, you are the future of this country, and the decisions that are being made today will impact you more than other people. How are you going to get involved in the process? Are the doors open for you to get involved? Can you make decisions? Are you prepared to be involved and make decisions for the future of this country? That's issue number one. Issue number two is, how do we determine what the most important issues are in our country? Is the story that appears on television tonight necessarily the most important issue? All right, if I walked down here and I slipped on the stairs, the likelihood is there'd be a photo. Well, I don't want to say that here, but often what politics is about, and I want to discuss this as well. How do we cover politics in our society? Do we focus on the important issue, or has a lot of it to do with what I would call looking at politics as a baseball game or a football game, gossip, poll numbers? Do you think that in a campaign we are actually focused on the important issues facing you? Is the campaign about me or Hillary Clinton, or is it about you? It's supposed to be about you. You know, not how I comb my hair or how I don't comb my hair. Not whether Larry David does a better job. Okay. I know, it's scary, isn't it? He sounds more like me than I sound like me. All right, and then how do we determine? How do we determine who the issues are? You have an issue? You have an issue. One of the things you learn, amazingly enough, when you're a United States Senator, this kind of blows your way when I was a congressman as well, mayor, is everybody has an issue, and it's all right. In this room, there are hundreds of issues. She has an issue that you would never have dreamed of, and it's important to her and her family, and you've got an issue that she will never have thought of, and that's kind of interesting. What are the issues? But by and large, as a nation, what are the most important issues facing our country? Who determines that? Are you thinking about that? Or is CBS deciding that? NBC? Who decides that? What are the issues? And one of the things that I learned a long time ago is that it is more important, again, I say this to the young people, it is more important to ask the good questions than give the right answers. You can give a brilliant answer to a question which is not important. And you can ask a really, really good question and not even know the answer. You understand what I'm saying here? So asking the right questions is very, very important. So let's start off, and I'm just giving you my views on this. You'll have different views. What are the important questions that we should be asking ourselves in our country today? I started off with one that really does concern me very much. I am a passionate, passionate believer in democracy. I kind of love democracy. I love doing meetings like this. As you know, I am the senator from the state of Vermont, and in my career in Vermont, I have done hundreds of meetings just like this. We go to small towns, we go to large towns, people come out, I talk, people ask questions. I love doing that. That's what democracy is about to me. So, first issue that I want you to be thinking about is the state of American democracy. Do ordinary people, do working people, do people in the middle class, are they the people who are determining what goes on in our nation's capital? Are the voices of ordinary people being heard and acted on? Or are the decisions being made at the behest of people who have a lot of money and a lot of power? Okay, so that's issue number one. And then the question is, and I want you to think about it, not everybody here is going to agree with me. I think many of you know where I come from. Others will come from different places, and that's great. What about power? Do we talk about power and power structure in America very much? Is that something you're going to see on NBC tonight, do you think? In fact, who owns NBC? Is that an important question to ask? Or ABC or CBS or Fox or anybody else? Okay. Who has power in America? Is it important to talk about distribution of wealth and income and how that wealth and income is converted into power? Not an important point. All right, so let's start there, because I think it is. Because I think what you learn when you're a United States Senator is every single thing is related to every other thing. You know, I wish I could segregate and say, this is this issue. It's not. It's related to that issue. So if we talk about the quality of democracy, why is it that millions of people have turned their backs and say, I'm not going to vote. I don't want to waste my time. My vote doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who I vote for. Rich get rich, everybody else gets poor. It doesn't matter. All right, issue number one. All right. What about income and wealth inequality? Question to you. Everybody doing great in America? We're all doing well? High tides lifting everybody up here? What's going on in America? Who has thoughts on it? All right, don't be shy. Who's going to be the courageous first person? There we are. Stand up, please. Your name is? Shelby.
I took out a $20,000 loan to pay for 2 years of college, community college.
Okay. Shelby took out a $20,000 loan to pay for 2 years of community college. That means that loan is around your shoulders and you're nervous about it as you go to school. All right, well, let's start off right there. In the United States of America today, we are the richest country in the history of the world. Do you all know that? Many of you don't, because people like Shelby don't see it. In the richest country in the history of the world, should Shelby have to take out a loan of $20,000? What's your interest? May I ask your interest rates if you're not comfortable telling me? Don't. 8%. Okay. All right. Now, I thank Shelby for doing something that we don't see enough. She stood up. She told 8 television cameras and you a reality that is impacting millions of people in this country. All right. Shelby's crime in life is that she wants to get a good education and get a decent job. Is that right? Okay. In the richest country in the history of the world, should middle class or working class or lower income people have to go deeply in debt to get a higher education? That's the question. Well, let's talk about it. What do you think? Is this the only way we can do it? Okay. Are other countries doing it differently? Who wants to talk about? One of the things that goes on in this campaign, I am proposing ideas, and I get newspaper editorials attacking me on Sanders' ideas are so radical. Oh my God, transform America. In what other countries would Shelby not have to take out a $20,000 loan at 8% interest rates? All right? All right, who wants? Raise your hand. All right, hold on, let's go. All right, young lady there. Yep, ma'am, stand up, please. What's your name? Edna?
Emmy Josco.
Emmy, okay. All right. Does every country in the world force somebody to
Germany? I read it in your papers over there. Germany is one of them.
You what? I didn't hear that.
Germany. I read it in your papers over
Okay. All right. What else? Let's talk about that. What other countries? Is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? And Germany is obviously not the only country.
Four of my grandchildren, fortunately, are growing up in Canada. They're getting a fantastic education, and they're going to be able to go to college for easily 1/5 of what we're paying here, and they won't have to borrow that money.
Are they Canadian kids?
They are.
Yeah.
My son is a landed alien in Canada.
Yeah, okay. All
And they are born there, so they are
Right.
dual
Okay.
citizenship. But they are getting a fantastic education and great health care. They have a thriving middle class. Every time I go there, my heart just cries for this
Okay.
country.
Thank you. All right. It's true. I live 100 miles away from the Canadian border, and colleges, they have good quality universities, and actually a lot of American students are going over the border there. All right. Further discussion on this issue. Raise your hand. Who has thoughts on it? Should Shelby have to pay this money? Give you an example, story. Two stories. In my state of Vermont, we had a meeting on this issue a year and a half ago. A young woman fulfilled her dreams of going to medical school and becoming a primary care physician, working with lower income people. She has a student debt of $300,000. I was I can't remember where it was, Des Moines or someplace else in Iowa a couple of months ago, and I mentioned that, and a young lady jumped up after the meeting and said, "Oh, that's nothing. I just graduated dental school." And by the way, we have a huge crisis in dental care in America. I graduated dental school. I'm $400,000 in debt. Okay. Yes. Stand up, please.
My husband and I graduated from medical school in 1999 with $500,000 in debt. We're paying it off, but we're supposed to be, we're still paying it.
Between the two of you, $500,000 in debt.
500,000, yeah.
All right, let's talk about this. This country has an urgent need for doctors. We have a doctor shortage, especially in rural and urban areas. We have a desperate need for primary care physicians. We have a desperate need for dentists. Do you think we should tell young people in medical school that they have to graduate hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt? Or kids who simply want to go out and get a good job, that they have to graduate $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in debt in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, when many other countries make different decisions? Why does Germany say that tuition should be free in their colleges? Are they crazy? Costs money to do it. Somebody's paying for this, that's for sure. Is it a good idea or not? Let's get some discussion going on this. Is it a good idea? Why is it a good idea? Let me get some hands here. Raise your hands. Yes, stand up. All right, there you go. Say that again with the microphone.
Why would you not want your citizens to be educated?
Well, I think that is it. In other words, here's where we are today. 50 years ago, if Shelby had a high school degree, that would put her in a pretty good position to go out and get a middle-class job. The world has changed in 50 years. And Shelby and every other young person, by and large, there are exceptions, I don't want to overdo it, but generally speaking, to make it into a good middle-class job today, you need a college degree. So some of us think that if as a nation we have determined that free public education historically has been from first grade or kindergarten through 12th grade, through high school, that in the year 2015 now is the time to extend that idea to colleges and universities, which is why I personally am fighting for free tuition at public colleges and universities. That makes sense? Now, I do that because I think the world has changed. And 50 years ago, free education through high school was great. I think we have to extend that through college right now because, as this young lady said, we are living in a highly competitive global economy, and for us to succeed, we need the best educated workforce in the world. So, to paraphrase what you said, why should we not invest in our young people, and not just young people, but all of our people, to get the best education they can? I believe in that, okay? So let me get back to a starting point, and we'll go from there again. When we talk about how decisions are made, as a member of the United States Senate, and I've been there now for 9 years, and I was before that 16 years in the House, I can tell you that for a variety of reasons, the needs of the middle class and working class of this country are not paramount in terms of how decisions are made. What is far more significant are the campaign contributions that come in from the wealthiest people in this country. And for years we have had a bad situation. Now it is even a much worse situation because as a result of Citizens United, the wealthiest people in this country can spend unlimited sums of money. Now, if you are a greedy millionaire or billionaire, not all of them are greedy, what is your agenda? What do you want? You want power? All right, now what power is, let's talk about power over the political process. I've just told you, I think that Citizens United was a terrible decision. And what Citizens United said by a 5-4 Supreme Court decision is that the wealthiest people and largest corporations could spend as much as they wanted in what we call independent expenditures. They can't give it to the candidate, but they can put as much television advertising on the air as they want. So you see some of that ads. It's, you know, this guy is terrible, he's awful, he's miserable. This ad comes from Citizens for this or that. And that's just a super PAC putting money in to attack somebody. That's how it usually works. The leaders of the Republican Party think that Citizens United did not go far enough. They would like to do away with virtually all campaign finance regulation and allow the Koch brothers and other billionaires to hand checks directly to a candidate. What does that mean? What are the implications of that? Raise your hand. Let's go. All right, well, let's get some hand. Raise your hand. Where's this oligarchy coming? Yes, sir. Stand up, please. All right, if I were a billionaire and I liked your views and I wanted you to run for the U.S. Senate from Iowa, I said, here's a check for $100 million. What does that mean? What's my relationship to you?
Well, I guess I'd be owing you some favors.
You might owe me a few favors. In fact, you might be an employee of mine. Is that fair to say?
That's true.
All right,
yeah.
and that is the direction that we are going. And if somebody else wanted to run and stand up and had no money, I would guess 95 out of 100 times you would beat that candidate.
Sure, I'd be the candidate, but you'd be my boss.
That's exactly right. I would be your boss. And that's where we are evolving, and that's what makes me very, very nervous. All right, yes, sir. Stand up, please.
When 100% of Koch brother elected Republicans deny the dangers of climate change, we are already there.
Okay.
And we've got to turn Citizens United around.
All right. I'm sorry, sir, your name? Jonas?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Jonas makes an interesting point, and I wanted to get there in a moment. Point that I'm trying to make in talking to this gentleman is if Citizens United were completely eviscerated, if campaign finance law were completely eviscerated, which is what Republicans want, and I gave him $100 million to run for the Senate from Iowa, essentially I would own him. He would be my employee. Now, Jonas makes another point, and let's talk about it. I wanted to get into the issue of climate change, which I believe, along with Pope Francis, along with virtually every scientist who has studied the issue, is one of the great planetary crises that we face. And here's the point. What Jonas is saying, which is true, is that we have today a Republican Party in Washington, with a few exceptions, but by and large, either denies the reality of climate change or is unprepared to make the changes we need to address climate change. Now, I find it interesting. You know, I am perhaps the most progressive member of the United States Senate, so my views are very different from Republicans on virtually every issue. That's fair enough. But on this issue, something is kind of strange, and I think Jonas is hinting at it. We don't have great debates in the Senate over cancer research. Republicans don't go around saying, you know, this doctor is terrible, da 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 da, or research on Alzheimer's or diabetes. You know, Republicans, like everybody else, looks at the science and they try to, you know, fund groups. You know, we argue about how much funding should go into it, but there's not some kind of great bitter division about who we are funding in terms of cancer research. Yet climate change is another issue where the scientific community is virtually unanimous. But somehow on this issue, Republicans are vehement that the scientists are wrong. It's not doctors studying cancer, they're not wrong. But scientists studying climate change are wrong. Why is that? And I think Jonas hinted at it. It's not that Republicans can't talk to scientists or read scientific papers, they can. It is because you have groups like the Koch brothers and ExxonMobil, who are heavily involved, obviously, in the fossil fuel industry, who are putting huge amounts of money into Republican candidates. And the truth is, this is the truth, that if today some Republican jumped up and said, you know what, I've been reading the stuff, I've been talking to scientists, and I've changed my mind. Climate change is real. It is a huge problem for our planet. We have got to do everything we can to transform our energy system. Jonas, what happens to that guy's source of funding the day after he makes that statement? It's gone. He's gone. And the likelihood is he will be primaried in a Republican primary with his opponent getting huge amounts of money. So this is a direct, and I thank Jonas for raising that point, a direct connection between campaign finance and a huge planetary issue, climate change. Okay. Now let's talk about income and wealth inequality for a moment. In America today, the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Got that? 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. In the United States today, one family, the Walton family, owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. In the United States of America, in the last 2 years, the wealthiest 15 people in this country, 15 people, that's the front row, saw their wealth increase by $170 billion, which is more wealth than is owned by the bottom 130 million Americans. In the last 2 years, Shelby had to borrow $20,000 to go to community college. All right. What do we think? Is this an important issue? All right. What do we do about it? Now, my Republican colleagues passed a budget. I am the ranking member of the Budget Committee, which means I'm the leader of the Democrats in opposition. Republicans, a number of months ago, passed a budget, which is essentially a recommendation to the Appropriations Committee. And they said, well, we are going to end the Affordable Care Act and throw 27 million people off of health insurance. We are going to transform Medicare, make cuts in Medicare. We're going to make devastating cuts in Medicaid. We are going to cut Pell Grants by $90 billion over a 10-year period. And oh, by the way, we're going to give the top 0.2% over $250 billion in tax breaks over the next 10 years. Now, how does that happen? That's the budget that was passed, and that's the budget we're struggling with right now. And that's a budget that the president would veto in many respects, and I will certainly support that veto. How does it happen? Do you think when you go out and you talk to your friends and your neighbors, they say, well, one of the really serious problems facing America at a time when the top 0.1% already owns more wealth than the bottom 90% is that we need to give gigantic tax breaks to the richest 0.2%. Do you think most people in your community are talking about that as one of the major problems facing America? Probably not. I could be wrong on it. I doubt it. How does it happen that that becomes what the Republicans do? Yes, ma'am. Stand up, be loud.
Because they own the media. So the media doesn't cover issues that are actually affecting Americans.
Okay, good point. Actually, that issue got very little media discussion. Very little. Almost none. Yes, ma'am, way in the back. Please stand up, be loud. Your name?
My name is Penn. The reason it happened is because 30% of the people who were eligible voted, and another 90% didn't. 70%, if you sit on your hands, and when they do go out and vote, they vote against their own interests. And as long as you sit there and say it doesn't make a difference if I vote, it doesn't make a difference if I vote, it makes a difference. If you go out and vote, if 90% or 80% of the people voted in this country, then Koch brothers would only have 2 votes.
You're exactly right.
And they could spend all the money in the world, and as if you didn't vote for the asses, you wouldn't have this going on.
You're absolutely right. I'm sorry, your name is? Pat. All right, Pat makes a very profound point, and I agree with him 100%. You know, I don't mean to be, I sound silly here. I'm running for president. I'm going to say I don't mean to be overly partisan. Obviously, I do. But, it's not my style, go around attacking people and all these things. But on the other hand, we have to lay things on the table. And this is what we're laying on the table. What Pat said, what I'll take from what Pat said, is that when large numbers of people come out to vote, that means working people, it means lower income people, their needs are very different than the Koch brothers and billionaires. So when ordinary people come out to vote, change takes place which reflects the needs of working people. If 90% of the people came out to vote, young people like Shelby would not be saddled with very high rates of student debt. We would not have 29 million people in this country who had no health insurance. We would not have policies in which the wealthiest people get huge tax breaks and nutrition programs for pregnant women get cut. That would not happen. So our goal when we talk about revitalizing American democracy is to not continue to be a nation which has one of the lowest voter turnouts of any major country on earth. I want to see us have one of the highest voter turnouts of any country on earth. Now, when we talk about voter turnouts, it is not just Citizens United and campaign finance. What else is going on, and I mentioned this earlier a little bit, attempts to make it harder for people to vote. Anyone know anything about that? What's going on there? Yes, ma'am. Stand up, please.
My father's an immigrant from South America in Colombia, and in there, they vote on a Sunday. The day of the voting, as well as, I'll let someone else say other reasons why, but the day of voting is always a work
Okay.
day.
In other words, you have two philosophies with regard to democracy and voting. My view is that democracy works best, picking up on Pat's point, when more people participate. So we sit down and we say, okay, how do we get more people to participate? And you're right, many countries, not just Latin American countries, take the day off. In fact, I've introduced legislation to do just that. Make voting day, election day, democracy day, let people take the day off, think about it, make sure they have the time to get out to vote. But it's not only that. What is going on today in a number of states around the country? Are governors trying to make it easier for people to vote or harder for people to vote? How so? Give me some examples. Yes, sir. Gerrymandering is one, yep. Yes, sir. Stand up, be loud.
Just specific voting restrictions such as identification
Right.
driver's licenses.
Right.
A lot of people aren't able to access those.
Right. So if we have seen this recently in Alabama, just coincidentally, you need government ID. Most often a driver's license works. Just so happened they shut down a number of the Department of Motor Vehicle offices in African American communities. No doubt a coincidence. I'm being facetious. I don't think it was a coincidence. And you're seeing this type of activity all over the country. So you can do a number of things to make it easier for people to vote. For example, it would seem to me, and we're going to fight for this, that anyone in America who is 18 years of age or older is registered to vote. End of discussion. Anything wrong with that? And by the way, it's not a radical idea. Canada is actually having their election today, and I think that is what the law is in Canada and many other countries. Okay, and if you engage in voter fraud, you're going to be severely punished because that is a very serious crime. But we have got to make it easier. We have to extend, not everybody can or wants to vote on election day, so you vote earlier in early voting processes. You can walk into your town clerk's office, mail in a postcard. We can figure out ways to make it easier, not harder, for people to vote. All right, let me touch on another issue. Let me skip to another issue, which Jonas raised. And let me get to it, because to my mind, it is a huge issue. And that is climate change. Not an issue we are talking about enough, but as a member of both the Environmental and Energy Committees of the U.S. Senate, I will tell you, we have heard from scientists not only in America, but all over the world, talking to us and saying climate change is real, climate change is caused by human activity, climate change is already causing devastating problems. And what they also tell us, if we do not get our act together, what you're going to see is more drought, more flooding, more extreme weather disturbances. What you are going to see is the acidification of the ocean and the warming of the oceans, which will have a huge impact on our planet. What you're going to see is rising sea levels, which will impact coastal cities and nations. What you are also going to see, and the CIA makes this point, is that around the world, if people do not have water to drink and land to grow their food, what's going to happen? You're going to have international conflict. All right? That is what the scientific community is telling us. They are also telling us that if we don't get our act together by the end of this century, not such a long time from now, this planet could be 5 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. 5 degrees Fahrenheit warmer, which is extraordinary. Okay? What we have got to do, it seems to me, we can't do it alone. This is a global problem. But what the United States has got to do is reach out and work with China, with Russia, with India in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. Now, the coal companies may not like that, and ExxonMobil may not like that. Some of you may have read, I don't know if you've seen this, that the scientists at ExxonMobil a number of years ago actually told the company that climate change was real. And then, of course, ExxonMobil chose to deny that reality. That is where we are with climate change. Now, the good news is, and by the way, congratulations to the people of Iowa for being one of the leaders in this country in moving toward wind, moving toward biofuels. Congratulations. My state of Vermont is doing a good job in a number of areas, as well as California is in many other states. But we can do much, much more. The cost of solar panels is plummeting. And if we invest and make it easier for people to own, to purchase, and to put up solar panels, the prices will go down even more. Utility-based solar plants are already producing electricity, in some cases, for well over 100,000 households. Wind, as Iowa and Texas are showing, has huge potential. Energy efficiency. We can make our buildings and our homes much more energy efficient. Our transportation system, our rail system today is way behind where many other countries are. And we've got to start investing in rail, getting trucks off of the road. We can cut carbon very significantly. We can lead the world in doing that, and when we do it, by the way, we create a lot of good-paying jobs in this country. So that is what we have got to do. Our obstacle right now is big energy, the coal companies, the oil companies, the Koch brothers, who fund many candidates who refuse to go forward on this issue. All right, let me transit to another very, very important issue and get your views on this. When pollsters call you up, call up the American people, and they say, okay, tell me what is uppermost on your mind, what is the answer that is usually given? What are people thinking about most? Jobs. That's exactly what they think, time and time again. Why is that? All right, well, let me give you the obvious answer. The obvious answer is that people in a very volatile economy are very nervous about whether they're going to have a job next year. The official unemployment statistics that you read every month that come from the government say that unemployment is 5%. But I want all of you to know that real unemployment is different than official unemployment. Real unemployment includes those people who have given up looking for work, and more importantly, the millions of people who are working part-time when they want to work full-time. Do you know anybody who's working part-time when they would like a full-time job? All right. Okay. There's one. All right. Now, when you add that together, real unemployment in America is 10%. All right? Let me say something else that we discuss much too little. Youth unemployment in America. Anyone know anything about youth unemployment? What's going on with youth unemployment? Easy for kids to get jobs? Okay, let me give you some statistics. I asked some economists a few months ago to do a study for me, and this is what the study was. It was to tell me what real unemployment, that's unemployment and underemployment, for high school graduates between the ages of 17 and 20 was. What they found is that for white kids, high school graduates, not dropouts, real unemployment was 33%. For Latino kids, 36%. For African American kids, 51%. Number one, have you heard much discussion of this issue? Have you heard any discussion of Hillary's emails? Maybe you have. Have you heard any discussion about my hair? There you go. Now, why is this a huge issue? I want you to think about it. Number one, why is it that we don't discuss it? But second of all, why is it a huge issue? All right, you're a high school graduate. got out of school, maybe you're not ready to go to college, maybe you're not interested in going to college. There are millions of people in this situation. What do you want to do in your life? You want to get out of your house, you want to earn a few bucks, you want to start a career, correct? Depending on where you live, it's pretty hard to do that if you're a high school graduate. What happens if you spend a year or two trying to get a job and you don't get a job? What happens to you? Who has some thoughts on that? Anyone gone through that experience in their life? Yeah, stand up, please. What's your name?
My name is Dallas.
Dallas?
I'm actually up from Des Moines. I'm a student here now, but
Yeah,
I graduated.
Dallas, grab that mic, please. It's right in front of you.
Sorry about that. I am a 2012 graduate of high school. I came out of high school, didn't really want to go to college, didn't want to join the military, didn't want to do all that. Started looking at vocational programs. A lot of them were very unaffordable, even at the area community college. So I worked full-time, 40 hours a week, and ended up busting my butt to live in a garage, basically, and then became homeless for about a year and a half. Was forced to join the military, didn't really want to. Medically discharged with no benefits whatsoever.
Why did you join the military?
I joined the military because it was a feasible future. They were going to pay for my college. I wanted education, but just couldn't afford it.
Right.
So I joined the military, was medically discharged. Wasn't a dishonorable nor honorable, but I didn't receive any military benefits, no GI Bill, no health care, nothing. Basically sat right back where I was. So my parents actually were the ones who had to bail me out, and I still feel bad that they had to take the financial responsibility and burden to help me out of that situation, and I don't think that it's fair that they should have.
Well, Dallas, thank you very much for sharing that story with us. So one of the things that we're trying to do in this campaign is to redetermine what reality is in America. The media does not do a good job on this. And the story that you've just told us, it's the story of millions of people in this country. And we can't go forward until we deal with that reality. And people have got to come up and then say, what do we do with that? But here's my concern. You got kids out there, young people like Dallas. They don't go for a year, 2 years, don't get a job, then they walk into an employer and the employer says to them, well, what have you been doing for the last couple of years? They say, well, I've been looking for work. Do you think they're going to get that job? In other words, their entire life is scarred. The entire future is scarred. Now let me transit to another issue, and you tell me what you think. In the United States of America, we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. China is an authoritarian communist country that doesn't tolerate dissent terribly much. They are 3 times larger than we are. We have more people in jail than China. Okay. Number one, is there a relationship to the fact that we have massive levels of youth unemployment and we have more people in jail than any other country? Who wants to talk to that issue? Say yes, no, maybe. Okay. Where are you? Okay. Be loud, please.
Against yourself. If you don't do it, they will hold you down and take blood from you now. And our government did this to us. And everything that you're talking about right now, our government has already done. They set up the rules. I'm a vet. I have 14 years in. I was wounded in Iraq. I spent 3.5 years after walking out of combat trying to get benefits. Cost me $60,000. I spent every dime in equity of my house. Now, I'm left with terminal cancer. I got 2 years maybe, okay? And you're walking up to me and you're saying that my government has the answer to anything? All I really want you guys to do is to create a structure that is reasonably easy for me to do things in. I've built businesses. I've done a lot of stuff in my life. I've also been homeless. Okay, I did not need a government program to come along and pull me out of any of that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
let me get back, and I appreciate what you said, and let me get back to the question of, is there a correlation between youth unemployment of 30, 40, 50% and people ending up in jail? Let me get some new hands there. Ma'am, stand up, please. There's a mic coming for you.
I don't like that.
You can hold the mic. Let her hold it yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, it's easier. Just close to your mouth.
Retired social worker. Just moved here from California. Been here for 3 months. And my focus was on perinatal chemical dependency. Poor women doing drugs while they were pregnant. During my thesis time and all that stuff in graduate school, found study after study after study that across the board, with women who had insurance versus women who didn't, the same amount of usage of drug and or a middle class woman's drug is prescriptions, the same, but they would not, over and over, and I'm sure, I don't know what Iowa found out, they would not test the woman with private insurance. They tested what you just said, more African Americans, more Latinos, and less white people.
Okay. All right, let me just tell you what I think. I understand where this gentleman is coming from, but I don't agree with him. I think the government should play a significant role in addressing issues like youth unemployment. And I think that it makes a lot more sense for us to invest in education and jobs rather than jails and incarceration. Because I believe that if we give young people constructive activity, we allow them to learn and earn, the likelihood of them ending up in jail will be much less. But where I do agree with that gentleman is that we have to rethink very seriously this so-called war on drugs. Too many lives have been destroyed for people who were involved in non-violent activities. So that is one issue among many others in terms of our criminal justice system that I think we have got to rethink. Now let me go to another issue out there. Why is it that in America, our people are working longer hours than do the people of any other major country on earth? The Japanese are very hard-working people. We work longer hours than they do. Why is it that in America today, millions of people are working not one job, but 2 jobs, and even 3 jobs in order to cobble together an income and health care? What is the common denominator of that? What's the thought? What about wages in America? Are they adequate? All right, gentlemen over there, please stand up, give them the mic. Just give them the mic.
Thank you. I work a 46-hour-a-week job. I have 4 kids, and my wife is a full-time college student. The reason that we do it is because the wages that we make, they're nowhere near what they should be. I mean, I live paycheck to paycheck, and that's lucky if I can get that. So, I mean, it's wages that is horrible for this country.
Okay, I think this, what's your name?
John.
John hit it right on the head. He said it better than I could. You got millions and millions of people who are working incredibly long hours. John's working 46 hours a week. A lot of people work more than that. And they are barely earning enough money to take care of their families. Federal minimum wage today is $7.25 an hour. Go up to $9 an hour. Multiply it by 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, and you end up with a number in which a family cannot survive. And that is why I believe we have got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, which is $15 an hour over the next few years. All right, let me touch on another issue. This country is still suffering from the Wall Street crash of 2008. What about Wall Street? Are they honorable people? People working day and night in banking, trying to do the best for the United States of America and the global economy. Does that describe Wall Street? All right, let's have some discussion on Wall Street. What do we do? Yeah, stand up, please. You're getting a mic, it's coming right to you. Give him the mic, good.
So from what I understand is, and personally I don't think this is right, why is it that students have to pay so much more interest on their student debts than Wall Street does when they borrow money by a significant amount?
Whoa, good, all right. Well, without going, that was a great question. That's a great point. But let me just pick up, getting back to Shelby's point, you're paying 8%, okay? Anybody refinance their homes lately? Anybody here? What'd you pay? More or less 4.25. Not on your mind, right? Okay. We refinanced our house a couple of years ago. I think it was lower than that. So why can she refinance a home at 4.25 and you're paying 8%? Does that make any sense? Not to me. And the legislation that we have, by the way, will allow people who have student debt to refinance at the lowest interest rates they can find. Yeah, ma'am, stand up.
But my husband and I have almost $60,000 in student loan debt at 8% interest, so they wouldn't refinance me lower because
Isn't
my
that
debt
something?
level is so high.
All right. You know, this is why the poor get poorer, isn't it? You had to borrow money to go to school. Now that you're in debt, you have to pay higher interest rates than you otherwise would have. That's how the cycle goes. Getting back to Wall Street, here's an issue. And I think this drives the American people a little bit nuts, especially when we talk about criminal justice and everything else. You got kids who have police records in this country for possessing a small amount of marijuana. Does any major CEO of a Wall Street financial institution whose greed and recklessness and illegal behavior destroyed this economy, resulted in the loss of millions of jobs, people lost their homes, lost their life savings, does any one of those guys have a criminal record? Okay. That tells you a little bit about our criminal justice system. We have a system in which large banks are too big to fail, and the CEOs of those companies are too big to jail. And we should think about that. Now, it seems to me, some of you may know this, some of you may not. We bailed out Wall Street because they were too big to fail, which means that if supposedly we did not bail them out, they would have taken down half of the economy with them. That was the theory. Today, 3 out of the 4 largest banks in America are significantly larger than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. Today, the 6 largest banks in America have assets of some $10 trillion, equivalent to 60% of the GDP of the United States of America. 6 financial institutions. These institutions control 95% of all derivatives and hold more than 40% of all bank deposits. They issue 2/3 of the credit cards in this country and 35% of all mortgages. 6 financial institutions whose track record up to now has been an unmitigated disaster. What is a rational policy toward Wall Street today, in your judgment? All right, let's raise your hands here. Yes, sir.
Break them up like we did 100 years ago.
I agree with the gentleman. I agree. I think you have now, let me give you an example. When the discussion about the deregulation of Wall Street took place, that was in the 1990s. And what you had was Wall Street saying, hey, we need deregulation. Let investor banks merge with commercial banks, merge with big insurance companies. This will be a really good thing. All right? Go to YouTube, go to the internet, and hear what I had to say as a member of the House Banking Committee on that in terms of debates with Alan Greenspan. Obviously, I thought it was an absurd idea and a dangerous idea. But against us, I want to tell you this also. We talk about money in politics. We talked a moment ago about what money means and campaign finance means for climate change. Let me talk about money in bank deregulation. Over a 10-year period, Wall Street spent $5 billion lobbying for deregulation. $5 billion over a 10-year period with lobbying expenses and campaign contributions. And they got on their side the Clinton administration. They got on their side corporate America, Republican leadership, and a lot of Democratic leadership. And by an overwhelming vote, Congress decided to deregulate, and you all know the results of that because many of you have suffered as a result of that. Now, I think the gentleman who talked about Teddy Roosevelt is exactly right. One of the things we are not doing in America is exercising antitrust law. Now, Wall Street is a perfect case in point, where a handful of banks exercise enormous economic and political power. And when you have a handful of institutions that have that much power, I agree. I think we should do two things. Number one, we should reestablish Glass-Steagall legislation. And number two, we should break them up. I want to see our community banks, I want to see our credit unions who know the communities, who know who to lend to, have more impact on our economy than what we're seeing today from Wall Street. When we talk about the economy, let's talk about health care. Very important issue. In my view, as a nation, we have made significant progress through the Affordable Care Act. More people have health insurance. But in my view, we have yet a long way to go. All right? What do most other countries, major countries, wealthy countries around the world do with health care? Anyone know? Raise your hand. Anyone have any thoughts? Been to Europe? Who's been to Europe? France? Any other countries there? Stand. Anyone give me some examples around the world? Yes, ma'am. Stand up, please.
They have single-payer health insurance. I used to live in Oxford, England.
In where? In England?
Yeah, and I'm a dual citizen. And when I lived there, I didn't have to worry about health insurance at all. It's a single-payer system, and.
Well, how did it work? I mean, what do you mean you didn't have to worry?
Well, they have the NHS, which is the National Health System.
Right.
And basically, the government will help you pay for necessary health insurance that you need for your basic everyday living.
All right. Other discussion about what goes on around the rest of the world. Anybody else have experience going around the world? Yes, there's a woman hand right back there. Hold that mic, please.
Yes, I visited Australia in 2010 because my daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren live there. And during my vacation there, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I thought about coming home to the U.S. for my treatments. My son-in-law convinced me to stay there. And when I called and compared prices, because at this time I did not have health insurance, I called my local hospital, found out how much my surgery would be and my radiation. My surgery in Australia was about $3,000 less than it would have been in the States, and it was $10,000 less for my radiation having it done in Australia. Now, I wasn't an Australian citizen, so I still had to pay for it, but it was significantly less than coming home and having it done.
Okay. Other thoughts? People have experience with healthcare in other countries. Anybody else want to talk to that? Okay. The truth is, the United States is the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. Okay? So we have made progress with the Affordable Care Act, but 29 million people continue to have zero health insurance. But that's only half the story. My guess is that many people in this room do have health insurance, but what? Why is it unaffordable? Stand up, tell us. No, you're doing good. Here, get your mic is coming here.
Because even when you do go to the doctor, you're left with a bill in a month or two of $1,000. If you go to the ER, it's over $1,000.
Right.
And
Right.
I just
So
wanna
you
say-
got millions of people who do have health insurance, but they have deductibles of $5,000, right? So you got to pay the rest. Other people, you got to pay, depending on your insurance policy, you have to pay a co-payment, right? The result of that is that when people get sick, sometimes they don't go to the doctor when they should. That makes sense to people? Anyone familiar with that? And I have talked to doctors in Vermont and around the country who tell me they have lost patients. Patients have died because they didn't go to the doctor when they should. And by the time they walked into the doctor's office, their situation was terminal. That does not make a lot of sense to me. So in terms of the issue of health care, my view is that we should guarantee health care to all people as a right through a Medicare for All single-payer program. And by the way, when we talk about health care costs, despite the fact that 29 million Americans have no health insurance and many more are underinsured, we end up spending much more per capita on health care as do the people of any other country. And a very important issue, which is now beginning to get a little discussion, what about prescription drugs? Easy, affordable? I'm hearing some laughter. All right, what you see right now is this is the reality. Unlike any other major country on earth, you have an illness, you have diabetes, whatever, you have heart disease. You can walk into your drugstore tomorrow and get your prescription filled, and you can find that the price of that medicine has doubled, gone up substantially. In fact, we have seen cases where medicine has gone up a lot more recently, more than doubled, gone up 1,000%, all right? Because the drug companies can charge any price they want. Ma'am, please stand up.
Health insurance through the government and the state, I would be paying over $14,000 a month for my medicine. And it's really sad.
$14,000 a month. All right, we have a situation now in terms of prescription drugs where oncologists are writing letters to the government and elsewhere pointing out that their cancer patients simply cannot afford the drugs that are out there. I'm the former chairman of the Veterans Committee, and among veterans, hepatitis C is a very serious problem. A new and very good drug has come out, much better than what we had previously. But that drug out here in the private market cost $1,000 a pill, $84,000 for the cost of treatment. VA is getting it cheaper, but still very, very expensive. So it seems to me that we have to take a hard look at health care and figure out how we provide health care to all of our people in the most cost-effective way and make prescription drugs available at an affordable cost as well. Yes, stand up.
All of the injustices that you have reviewed today, they all come down to profits over people.
Yep.
So, and of course, because of Citizens United, the stranglehold of this profit-driven system on our elected officials has reached epidemic and unprecedented proportions. So, Senator, this will sound like you planted me here.
Have I ever met you before, Jonas?
No, sir.
All right.
But as our next President of the United States, would you please tell us how you will lead us past this stranglehold and onto a better future for America?
Jonas, I think, hit the nail on the head when he talked about a casino-type capitalism in which big money interest will do anything to make more money, even if it means crushing the middle class and working families. And that's where we are right now. Greed is rampant, and that greed is destroying our economy. Jonas, what I have said throughout this campaign, and it's a good way to maybe end this discussion, is that given the power of corporate America and corporate media and large campaign donors and Wall Street, no president of the United States can alone do what has to be done. These guys are just too powerful, all right? No president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else. And that is why what I call our campaign, which is unique in American history, I call it a political revolution, because it is not just electing me as president. If I can't accomplish what needs to be accomplished, what's the sense of electing me as president? And the only way we can accomplish what I believe the American people want, the vast majority of our people, is when tens of millions of people begin to stand up and loudly and clearly say, enough is enough. This government that people fought and died for belongs to all of us and not just a handful of wealthy campaign contributors. So my request of you today is twofold. Yes, obviously, I'm here running around Iowa trying to gain votes and trying to gain support to win the caucus here in Iowa and to win the Democratic nomination. Yes, I am trying to do that. But what I am also telling you is I need your help the day after the election. Just to elect me and send me to the Oval Office without millions of people standing up and fighting so that together we can bring about the changes. Without that, we're not going to make the changes that we need. So what this campaign is about, and we have had great success. Let me just, if I might now become a little bit political here and talk about my campaign. There are some people out there who say, you know, many of these pundits and these great political geniuses say, you know, you can't win a presidential race unless you have a super PAC and unless you collect zillions of dollars from millionaires and billionaires. I don't have a super PAC. I don't want a super PAC, and I'm not going to start a super PAC. And guess what happened? It turns out that there are a heck of a lot of Americans who agree that super PACs are destroying American democracy, and they are prepared to contribute to our campaign. We have received up till now over 650,000 individual contributions. 650,000 Americans. And you know what the average contribution is? It's around $30 a contribution. How's that? So it turns out, and this is already part of the political revolution, that you can run a campaign based on the needs of the middle class and working families of America, and you could do it with small individual contributions rather than a super PAC raising money from millionaires and billionaires. And the other thing that we have done in this campaign, at a time when so many people are disillusioned and are giving up, we have had meetings like this and a lot larger meetings all over America. A couple of weeks ago, we had a meeting in Boston, 24,000 people were out. Portland, Oregon, we had 28,000 people out. We have had meetings right now throughout this campaign where over 350,000 people have come out to meetings. And that number is only going to grow. So it seems to me, to answer your point, the American people are hungry for real change. The American people want an economy that works for working families, not just billionaires. The American people want a political system in which ordinary people can determine the future of our country and not just a handful of very wealthy people. And that is the campaign we are running, and that is the campaign that is going to win with your support. Thank you all very much.